What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope you like this video. We are here. We've been waiting and anticipating the two-night event over on Lifetime Television, which is the Janet Jackson documentary. Listen, y'all know I don't stand for many people. First of all, I don't stand for anybody because I don't even like that whole mindset of a stand. But if I was going to stand for somebody, baby, y'all know it is Whoopi Goldberg and it is Janet Jackson, okay? I think I stand for Whoopi, though. I do. Because even when Whoopi wrong, I be trying to find ways to defend it. So I'm probably a stand for Whoopi. But I love Janet. Like, absolutely love Janet. I have been a Janet Jackson fan since I discovered Good Times Child. Loved her on Good Times. I remember her on Fame, which I got some information about Fame, which kind of surprised me. I remember her on Fame, Different Strokes. And I remember her music before Control. I remember Dream Streets and that other song, that her little other song that I remember that. But when she dropped Control, baby, you know what I'm saying? Like, baby. So let's get into it. So it's a 2-night event. They played part 1 and part 2 last night, and then they're going to play part 3 and part 4 tonight. I'm not sure why they did it that way. They could have really drugged this out for a couple of days, but maybe they just decided they didn't want to do all of that. So what I quickly found out about this documentary is Janet is going to open up to us, and Janet is going to share a lot with us, but she is not going to get into salaciousness. And what I mean by that, I'll explain in a few minutes. So let's just start at the beginning. This whole thing started in 2017 with her 8th concert tour. The documentary started, they were gonna chronicle the concert tour. But they ended up spending the next 5 years with her to do this. It evolved into this project, right? And so for the last 5 years, Janet Jackson has opened herself up and shared herself and what's going on. And so I'm hoping that what we're going to get tonight, I'm hoping it's going to get into her last marriage, and we haven't seen her child, and we may not, and I can respect that. But I'm hoping to get a little more insight in that whole situation. I have seen Janet in concert a few times. I was supposed to see her in July of 2020. Is that right? 2020? Yeah. And y'all know where we were in July of 2020, right? I was so mad when they refunded me my tickets. I was like, no, just hold on to my money, because when she come back, I'm going to be there. Just keep it. I was so mad. Anyway, so the documentary starts off with her going back to Gary, Indiana. And she said she ain't been back there since she was 8. And I just found that to be interesting that she hasn't been since she left. We know that Gary hasn't done well. It hasn't fared well over the years. It was mainly like a manufacturing town. It was one of those towns that sort of went the way of manufacturing when the factories shut down and things like that. What we find out is that Gary wasn't all of that great when they were kids. It was a lot of gangs, and it was a lot of stuff going on, and that's one of the reasons why Joe didn't want his kids out there, and why he kept them occupied with other things to keep them out of the streets. Randy is there when he's there to meet Janet, and Janet said that from kids it was always her, Randy, and Michael, because they were the 3 youngest, and isn't Randy younger than Marlon? But anyway, they were 3 of the youngest. I'll put it that way. They weren't the 3 youngest because I'm not certain, but she talked about how they were tight. They were the tightest. And so Randy was there to meet her. It looks like their home has been turned into some sort of a, I don't want to say monument, but it's been preserved. There's a fence around it, and it's well kept. I don't think it's a museum, but it's definitely a landmark, and it is maintained. And I don't know if the city maintains it or the Jackson estate maintains it, but so Janet went in, and they were just talking about the house, and the house was small. And she said, when we were kids, it seemed a lot bigger. But that's that whole perception thing anyway. So you had 9 kids plus mommy and daddy in a 2-bedroom shoebox, because it's really Really, really one of those small homes. And the girls slept on a couch in the living room. The boys slept in two bunk beds in the second bedroom, and of course, mommy and daddy. Um, what I found interesting was Randy, when he was talking to Janet, he kept saying, "Your father this and your father that," and I'm thinking, don't y'all got the same damn daddy? And I know they call him by his first name. Like that was always weird when I was a kid that they called him Joe. Joe. Michael called him Joe. Janet called him Joe. So I always thought that was weird. But to hear Randy be like your daddy, that was even weirder for me. Like your daddy, he your daddy too, Randy. Anyway, so in 1971, the family moved to Hollywood. They moved to Encino, California. And again, a lot of this stuff, if you grew up a Michael Jackson fan, you know. But what I probably didn't remember, I guess I didn't know, because maybe somewhere along the way I knew, but I didn't remember. There was a lot of racism. They were like one of the first black families to move into that neighborhood. And so, the neighbors weren't ready for 10 black folk moving in, 11 black folk moving in their neighborhood pretty much at one time. They said they used to have a lot of parties where, of course, all of the Motown artists would be there. They talked about David Bowie came through, and we saw footage of Red Fox and things like that. And so I'm sure that didn't help with the neighbors looking up going, who in the hell are all these niggas in my neighborhood? She said in school, it was really hard for her in school because, the kids would want to touch her hair and touch her skin to see if it rubbed off. And she said she didn't have a lot of friends, because, it was just hard to make friends. It was just different from everything they've ever known, coming from Gary and moving into this environment. And then people not really liking you. I think she said they even started a petition to get them out, to try to get the family out. And so, that was something different. Now, Joe Jackson started a Vegas show for the whole family, which we've seen clips of over the years. And again, you have to, we give Joe Jackson a lot of headache about him. I think Joe Jackson ran into the same problem that a lot of people run into in management. When your proteges get to a certain point and you no longer have the skill set and the connections to get them to that next level. Joe Jackson did a great job of getting his kids where they needed to be as far as making them be success in the entertainment industry. But once they got to that superstar status, I don't think he had the temperament and the connections to go to the next level. So the fact that he came up with this Vegas show and was able to make the Vegas show happen, like that was new. That was like, now everybody gets Vegas residencies. But to have a family variety show where LaToya and Rebe and Janet, this was outside of the Jackson 5. And he was able to bring all of his family in and everybody getting paid. Like, I ain't mad at you, Joe. I mean, it might have been some other shortcomings there, but can't nobody be mad about that. Janet said that she was never asked to be in the variety show. She was always just, it was just happened. She was told you were in the show. And she said that first night she wasn't nervous. And so for the rest of the night, the rest of the time they did the show, she was there. She was just on it. She was ready. It was exciting for her. She talked about how she didn't do things that normal kids did because they were working. She talked about, Vegas is not for kids. I mean, it's more family friendly these days than it used to be, but Vegas ain't for kids. And so in the 1970s, you're talking about her and Michael and the younger ones being able to wander around. And she said they saw the little, the topless shows and things like that. So, she said then good times came around. And her dad, basically got her that part. He reached out and wanted her to play Penny and got her the role. So again, can't be mad at Joe. and Norman Lear, they interviewed Norman Lear, and he said how, the character of Penny was a challenging character because we know Penny dealt with child abuse and she had to show emotions, fear, scared, love, vulnerability. She had to cry, all of that. And he said that she was good, she was good at tapping into those emotions, right? They didn't really talk about her years on Different Strokes. I find that to be interesting. They kind of skipped right over her being on Different Strokes. And I wonder if they asked her about it and she didn't have a whole lot to say, because I can't believe that they talked about Fame, which I feel like she was on Fame about as long as she was on Different Strokes, and they didn't mention. But we didn't. We skipped right on over her being Charmaine over on what's his name? Todd Bridges girlfriend, child. Now, she said she wanted to go to college. She wanted to go to Pepperdine and study business law. And she said that her father was like, yeah, no, you're going to go into show business. And she was like, what parent doesn't want their children to go to college, And around that time was when, they decided she was going to make music. And she did her first album. She said, nobody asked me nothing. I just showed up to the studio. I sang what they wanted me to sing. She said, I didn't even have any say so on the picture that they used to put on my album cover. And it made no connection. It meant nothing to me. There was no connection there. It was around that time where Fame came about. And she said she didn't want to do Fame. She didn't want to do it. And now, when I look back on her career on Fame, some things make sense, because as a kid, because I loved Fame. I watched Fame growing up, and I loved Fame. And as a kid, watching her on Fame, as much as a fan as I was always mad because I felt like they didn't utilize her enough. I said, y'all didn't do enough with her character, Cleo, on Fame. I felt like she sort of got the short end of the stick. I mean, there were episodes we never even saw Cleo. And she was only on Fame, I want to say 2 seasons max. I know it was at least 1 full season. I ain't even sure about a second season. But I know it was at least 1. And I just remember thinking, they not even utilizing her. But to hear her say now, listen, I didn't even want to do the show. She said, I was late a lot. And I just didn't put my all in. And they did interview Debbie Allen. And you could tell that Debbie Allen was being very nice. But if you kind of read between the lines, you heard her saying, yeah, Janet wasn't really giving us what we needed. She wasn't present in the moment. And again, that's my interpretation. I feel like she was being really nice about it. But if you read between the lines, because, I mean, Debbie Allen ain't going to get on here and say nothing bad about Janet Jackson. But around this time is also, she said she realized that she had to get away from her father. She realized that her father was very controlling, and she was never going to be able to make any decisions until she got away from her father. And in her mind, the way to get out the house was to get married. We know Reby got married very young, and she said that was the way for me to get out the house, was to get married. And so she had met James DeBarge years before that on Soul Train. Him and his family were performing, and they met backstage, and she said that his brother wanted to date LaToya, and so that's kind of how they got connected. And all of them, and she started dating. They started dating when she was 16. They got married when she was 18, and they eloped. They didn't tell nobody. They went to, his family is from Minnesota. They went to Minnesota, and his uncle married them down at the little chapel. And she said, they went back to the hotel that night, and he went out and never came back home. And she said, I didn't realize that he had a drug problem before we got married. And once we were married, I wanted to save him. I thought I could save him, which all of us go through that. Whenever you're dealing with somebody in your life that has a substance abuse problem, you always deal with that mindset that you can save somebody. And I remember hearing the stories where they would say that Janet would be out all hours of the night looking for him, trying, going into the worst neighborhoods in LA, trying to find him. And she spoke on that. So she confirmed that story that, yes, she said, I used to go out, she said, so no, I wasn't worried about fame and I would be late because I just had other things I was dealing with. I had other issues that was going on and I didn't want to do the show anyway, and it just wasn't my priority. They did address the rumor about her having a child. She said that she ain't had no child, that she would never do that to him. She would never keep a child away from their father. She would never do that to James. And then they spoke to Debbie Allen again, and Debbie was like, listen, she was on Fame the whole time she was married to this man. I don't know when she would have slid a baby in there. Like, she's on camera. You see her. Now, she said she did gain weight during this time period because she said she started taking birth control pills, and that put weight on her. She said, but I don't even know where that rumor came from. She said, I did not have a child. She said, first, they tried to say that, one of Randy's daughters was hers because they look so much alike. And then they tried to say that Reby was raising the daughter and it was one of Reby's kids. And she just said it wasn't. She said, it's not true. It's just not true. I don't have a child. I don't have a secret child. It is not true. Now, something that she did say that I thought was interesting was that she said she always seems to find men that have drug problems. So I'm wondering if we're going to see a pattern with some of the other men she's going to speak on. Because I think a lot of people were like, oh, is she going to talk about Bobby Brown when she dated Bobby Brown? Is she going to talk about that? I don't think, that's what I mean by she's not going to get into the salaciousness, y'all. She ain't going to talk about every man she ever went on a date with. Because we know that her and Todd Bridges dated a little something. They ain't even bring his name up, okay? I don't think we're going to get into the weeds of her love life. We're going to talk about the people y'all already know about, and that's going to be that. The marriage only lasted for a year, so she said it ended up getting annulled. Now, then we start getting into, she said that her relationship with Michael changed during the Thriller time. She said me and Michael had always been really, really close. We had always been really, really tight. But around the time of Thriller is when our relationship really shifted. And again, I feel like she was being very nice in the way in which she said that. I just think it was a very nice way of saying he kind of stopped fucking with us, because they showed a video clip of Reby saying she hadn't talked to Michael in over a year, So I feel like that was a nice way of saying that. But again, the reality is he was working. Thriller was like, again, if you didn't live through that Thriller moment, you don't understand what it was like. It was ridiculous. It took over the world. Like, I know people who had 3 or 4 copies of Thriller. They had the vinyl, they had the cassette tape. You know what I mean? Like, it was phenomenal. Like, I don't even have the vocabulary right now to describe it. So in 1985 is when she started making Control. And she said that, trying to get away from her daddy, the marriage ain't work. And so she just had to kind of put her foot down and let her father know, listen, I'm going to do my own thing and you are no longer going to be my manager. They talked to one of Jeanette Davenport, I believe, used to work for her father. And one day she said, she went to work one day and he wasn't there. And he told them, listen, we're no longer representing Janet. The business is shut down, but I want you to go work with Janet because she's going to need you. And she ended up being Janet's first personal assistant. And I find it interesting because by that time, Janet must have been his own client. If Janet firing you means you shut down your business, and he probably was tired. Because you got to remember that by the time Janet was 18, he had went through the whole thing with his sons and then representing Janet. And I know he was LaToya's manager, for a while. But at this point, I guess it wasn't nothing left, So I found out to be interesting that his business shut down when Janet fired him. And she reached out to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who she had met them at a concert. She had seen them perform with The Time. And we know she went out to Minneapolis and they made magic. Now, she said that for the choreography, she reached out to Paul Abdul, who she knew because she had worked with their brothers. And again, not getting into the salaciousness, because we know that Paula Abdul had a whole affair with one of her married brothers. But we ain't gonna go down that road. We ain't gonna do that. We're gonna keep it here. We ain't gonna keep it here. And she talked about being in, for the first time, being in control of everything, her career, and again, go back when they played it in here, the first the video for Control, that little statement she makes at the beginning. This is a story about control, my control of what I say, control of what I do, and this time I'm going to do it my way. That said it all. That said it all. Like, if you didn't know what Janet Jackson was letting you know, then you ain't want to know, because that said it all. And Control did numbers. It did numbers. She was nominated for awards, and breaking records. She broke records and all of these different things. She was nominated for this, but she was still living in Michael's shadow. They said that she would do tours and interviews, and every time that she was being interviewed, they would ask her, what about Michael? What was this about Michael? Is that true about Michael? Because remember, this is in the shadows of Thriller. Oh, does Michael sleep in a sleep chamber at night? Oh, well, where's Michael with Bubbles? And I mean, they would literally ask her in an interview about her album, well, where's Michael right now? Like, I'm sitting here with you. How do I know? How would I know where Michael Jackson is? And I'm literally sitting here doing an interview with you. And so, even as hard as she worked and as much as she had done for herself, she was still dealing with the being in the shadow of Michael Jackson. And they wanted her to tour after that first album, but Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis said that she didn't think she was ready to tour. She didn't think she had enough hits to do a tour. And so that's when they started working on the second album, which of course we know was Rhythm Nation. Golly, which was a statement piece. It was about social injustice and all of that. And at this time, she had started dating Renee. We know Renee ended up being her second husband. But here's where the documentary gets good. Because Renee, his family came from the movie industry. And Renee was one of those people that videotaped everything. And so we are seeing these candid behind-the-scenes footage of Janet Jackson that we've never seen these videos before. And we've just never seen her like this. She met Renee through a friend, and they became friends, and then they started dating. And you see them together, and you see her happy and smiling and laughing and very candid and being silly. And you even see when he proposed to her. The footage, there's video, they were in Hawaii, and you saw him propose to her. The camera was far enough away that you didn't hear the proposal, but you saw it. You saw her crying, and you saw them embrace. And so I'm loving the fact that we're seeing this part of Janet Jackson. But again, some of the vibes that I picked up on is that Renee was very controlling. That Renee had created a situation where you sort of had to go through him to get to her. And he had her ear. If he liked it, you were good. If he ain't like it, it was a problem, I loved, they had this clip at the end of the second episode that showed them in the studio, her with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and you saw them get mad at each other, and you saw Janet get pissed because they wanted her to sing it a certain way, and she just couldn't get it. The way they wanted her to sing it, it just wasn't coming out. And he kept stopping her, and you could tell she was tired, and you could tell she was irritated. And finally, you see Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, she's singing, and they're laughing. And she's like, what are y'all laughing about? What's so funny? Like, no, just tell me what you want me to do. Don't laugh at me. You're pissing me off. Baby, you heard Janet cuss. They had to bleep it out. And you hear Renee, because he's videotaping this, and you even heard Renee say, you want me to stop? You want me to stop? Like, you want me to stop the camera? And you heard him finally say, you know what, we're going to go home. She's tired. We're going home. And she was like, I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm leaving. And they didn't, Jimmy Jam didn't want her to leave. And I don't know if he didn't want her to leave because he wanted her to keep singing so much as he didn't want her to leave mad. But we know she came back, and we know that they finished the album. And like he said, listen, we fight. We don't always agree. And we don't always do things the way I want to do things. But we always come to an understanding and an agreement. And we're able to move forward. So I thought that was great, too. Because you hear about it. Like, I've heard Janet say, hey, we're like brother and sister. And sometimes we fight like brother and sister. But to see it, it was deep. And so episode 2 ended with her going on her Rhythm Nation tour, which was her first tour, and of course it broke records. I think Jimmy Jam said, and then she was nominated for Grammys. She was the first black female artist to be nominated for Producer of the Year, which I think they said is a record that still stands, or one Producer of the Year, whatever. But she's still holding records, okay? And that's where the second episode ends. So the third and fourth episode picks up at Rhythm Nation, and I guess it's going to take us through her and Renee's relationship, the demise of the relationship, Poetic Justice, Jermaine Dupri, and her former husband and her child. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm in Janet heaven. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Drop it in the comments. Peace.